Hello and welcome to the programme. Ukraine is committed to modernise public governance and establish closer links with the European Union. This reform is planned to be completed by the year 2020. So what exactly will change and how will this change influence the governance in Ukraine? Well, I'm pleased to say here to talk more about this, we are joined in the studio today by Ivan Khilobok. He's a senior project manager at Reforms Delivery Office of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. Hi, thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Hi, Tom, and thank you for inviting.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So, to really start off with, for our audience who are perhaps not aware what your organisation does, can you perhaps sum up what it does?
Yeah, very briefly. So, I work in the Reform Delivery Office of Cabinet of Ministry. It's an advisory and consultative body to the Prime Minister and to the Cabinet, which focused on the coordination and facilitation of key priorities of the government and also cross-functional reform, which specifically which specifically required more coordinated work on the level of different ministries, being, for example, public administration reform, decentralization reform, deregulation reform, and such kind of huge task with government agenda have now.
Yes, and must not be an easy task for you.
Yes, of course. Everything we did, I think, in Ukraine for last years, it's not an easy task. So we have government prepared a comprehensive reform agenda, reform plan, and it was first time that it was a 3 years medium-term government action plan. And effective governance and public administration reform was one of 5 of the priority of this government. And we doing planning, supporting monitoring, coordination, and also some policy advice, and of course support government with communicating the so difficult and complex reform process we have now in our country.
Yeah, and actually what we've done is we've taken a graphic from one of the presentations about the reforms in Ukraine. I think we can show it on the screen in a couple of seconds, and it really illustrates, we can see it there, really illustrates sort of the broad task ahead, really. There's so many different sectors that need reforming. Can you tell us a bit about really the progress of reforms in 2018, what has been achieved, and also perhaps what you'd like to do more of?
Yeah, so if we're talking about in general progress, there are several streams which were on a good track, and I would say that it is, of course, a progress in is establishing an anti-corruption court and voting for this law, and also going up in doing business index, which was tremendous job was done to get some points higher with deregulation and economic reform, but also as we are speaking about one of the priority being public administration reform, so the building of new effective state machinery, government machinery was started in 2016, but actually was heavy heavy implementation in 2017, and now in 2018 also continues with reforming of the center of the government and reforming of the ministries.
So when you say that, for the average person watching this program, how would you describe public administration reform in very simple terms? What does that mean?
Yes, I know that it's not an easy task, and we work hard on it, but if in very simple, we are building a new administration with a human face and with a focus on citizen needs and citizen services for citizens. So actually we want to break this post-Soviet administrative style, hierarchical style of administration, and really focusing on delivering services in a much broader way than just providing passport or something. So it's make it more open, more transparent, and more cooperative with the citizens for the sake of the development of the country by implementing a good evidence-based, well-prepared, coherent, discussed with public government decisions, which should provide development for the country for the 5-10 years. So to streamline this more strategic and more coherent public policy in Ukraine.
Do you have an example of this, perhaps in business?
We have, in business, of course, every business have long-term and medium-term strategy, and also they are providing analysis of the competitive environment, and they always try to be more flexible and competitive in their terms, but also in other countries within other governments. For example, there is in the centers of government there are so-called foresight centers that actually plan and develop the country progress, the country's development path for sometimes even 50 or 30 or 20 years. And before our reform starts, the public administration reform starts, it was not, I must say, there were not enough procedures and skills embedded into the public administration to really focus on long-term development, like being a strategy developer, but also ensuring coherent, sustainable implementation. We know that in our country, political government changed very often. Before the 2015, the average time period of one minister was around 12 months. So every 12 months, the minister and the ministry changes, and it, of course, brings some lacks some issues.
It's like an instability.
It's instability, and also you need like a couple of months, usually from 3 to 6 months, for new minister to get to the business to understand what is going on, and in the 6 months you should change. So at this one of this focus of the reform was stabilizing the professional top civil service and being more creating more stable, professional and capacity building approach inside the administration for the sake of citizen well-being.
And since you've started your work, what sort of progress have you seen? What sort of changes have happened?
So as of now, we started, the most focus was in the area of restructuring ministries, but also it was a tremendous progress, I think, in digitalization of administrative services. Last year we provide new 35 electronic services, and even some services was fully digitalized, that you can achieve, for example, permission for the building just from in front of your computer. So it's the process of this simplification and digitalization of services, and also of being more transparent and working and providing more open data to the public. It was a big achievement last year. We are now in the top 30 of country on global open data index. But if we are talking about restructuring the ministries, restructuring the central level, of course, it's not an easy task. It's a complex, and we have a legacy of post-Soviet system of 25 years, and with some processes very stabilized, old-fashioned, unflexible, and of course the process is not going so fast as we planned before 2 years ago, but still the progress is, I think, is well enough. So we establish a new 60 new structures calling directorates, which was focused only on policy development and actually working with the stakeholders, being business associations, citizens, and also for solving together a countrywide problem and find the best possible solutions, and also to understand how different policy decisions will have what impact on a broader scale of the country. Also, we launched last year civil service vacancy portal called Career.gov.ua, and it is the first portal in Ukraine where you can also apply online. And we have around now almost 900 vacancies, and 20 4,000 applicants, which now giving us average candidates around 24 per one position. Before we launched this, it was less than 2% who willing to apply to civil service.
Well, sounds quite competitive now.
So it's a 10 times increase, and even we now have a comparative analysis with our European partners, European countries. There are no such interest, and that's now to
so people really have to brush up their CVs, make them look good.
yes. Because it's now, I think it's a good opportunity both to be part of the change of the country and to dedicate your skills, your knowledge to the development of the country. Because yes, it's actually a long process of state building of Ukraine, which we started only after the revolution of dignity, and we had a lot of things to do to be more aligned and compare with European countries, specifically in terms of public administration principles and machinery.
And I think it's so impressive as well when you look at countries like Estonia, who have really gone the other direction. Everything is online. You can get driving licenses, land permits, birth, death certificates, all these sort of things you can get through there. So is that your dream? Can you imagine this happening in Ukraine?
We are going towards this, but we could not say this is the only possible solutions, because there are different options how, and specifically how to organize the back office and how to organize the legal framework for all these changes, and for example online driving license and all of this. But before we came to this, we really need to redesign our internal process of administration, because now it's just very difficult to agree between two ministries, for example.
So how do you do this then? Because it's not just an effort of cost cutting, for example. It must be training.
Usually we have several approach of providing change, and so first it's really a coordination and facilitation of policy decision and policy discussions. We don't have in our country, and specifically in our political and administration culture, a dialogue culture, compromise culture. So it's a lot of people want really, they believe in their own ideas, and now it is a lot of efforts and time goes to put everyone on the table, to agree, to discuss. And then after the decision is taken, it's starting the implementation process. So one approach is a classical project management, where you have goals, KPIs, project team, resources also is very important. And the next part is the communication, both public communication and internal communication, to explain what is the change, why it is important, and also, of course, the big problem which also reflects by our European partners and by politicians, but it is capacity of new approaches, of new instruments, tools that are used inside administration and also between administration and citizens. So sometimes even some processes are not necessarily needed. So our task at some areas not make them everything online, but even rethink, do we really need this for the country? What is the benefit for both citizens and the state? So really to change the approach, how the civil service interacts with this citizen. You know, when you came to the commercial bank, it shows that everybody wants that, like in this bank, that you become a client of this bank. We want to achieve this also in administration, in state services. That when you come to the center of administrative services, or when you come to your some stakeholders who you would like to say, that it's you are listened to, your problem is heard and even sometimes solved. So,
well, hopefully solved.
Hopefully solved. Or at least explained why it could not be solved.
Exactly.
Yes. With more transparency, more open data, and more communication.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Tom, for inviting.
Thank you. That was Ivan Khilobok, the Senior Project Manager at Reforms Delivery Office of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. You're watching UATV.